Hello, everyone. So, today I'm going to be talking about shame, the silent force that shapes all of us to some extent, coming from trauma, coming from complex trauma. And, like I always say, I'm not here to build victims, I'm here to give you a new perspective on these silent forces that are running us. And shame really is that belief on some level that you're not good enough. It's not necessarily a feeling, although it manifests as a feeling. So, what shame is and why shame matters. Shame is one of the most powerful emotions that we can experience, yet it's hiding in the background of our lives. And it's not like fear, where fear is loud and urgent. Shame is quiet and it whispers in the background that we're not enough, that we can't do something, that we should just isolate, that we should avoid eye contact, that we should keep parts of ourselves hidden away from the world. And, this conversation is about understanding shame. What I'm saying here today is about understanding shame, how it forms, and how it silently directs our choices. And more importantly, it's about learning how to transform shame into a guide rather for growth than it being this prison or this glue that's holding us back. So the nature of shame. Shame is not the same as guilt. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong. It touches the core identity. It tells you that your very being is flawed. And this makes shame incredibly painful. And because it hurts so deeply, we often build layers of defenses around it. We joke, we distract, we hide, we get angry, anything to avoid feeling it directly. But the truth is, until we turn and face shame, it will control our lives. So where does this shame come from? So it develops in childhood. Maybe it was a parent who told you that you were lazy or unworthy, or going back even further, it could be neglect, being abandoned, physically abused, sexually abused. And that seems to break this contract we have with our parents that we are lovable as we are. And suddenly we're not so lovable. Suddenly the world is a different place, and our nervous system reacts. Our nervous system learns to go into survival mode. If you were being yourself as a child, which you were, and that led to rejection, your conclusion is that you shouldn't be yourself. You're not good enough as you are. So shame then becomes this internal alarm system that says, don't show this part of yourself or you'll be hurt again. Just quickly before I carry on in the video, if this is helping you, please subscribe to my channel so others can see it. Thank you very much. Let's keep going. It's that I was carrying this. I was carrying it in my shoulders, my eyes, in the front, in my forehead, in my throat, in the back of my neck. And I was constantly holding this weight. And it's physical. It's a physical thing. It doesn't just exist in the mind. It shapes how we carry ourselves through the world. We'll drop our heads, look down, and just won't have that same. We won't look the world in the eye, right? And that's from shame. And this is why working with shame requires more than thoughts. We can't simply tell ourselves to stop being ashamed. We need to notice how it lives in our posture, our breathing, and our energy. So the hidden rules of belonging at the very core of us, every group, we have this need to belong. We are all asking the question, am I lovable? Am I worthy? And then our caregivers give back that answer, and there's a certain criteria. And some criteria will be, you're only lovable when you're a good boy, or it's completely random. And then we then see the world as this scary, unpredictable place. But the mind will then make conclusions on how we react to these rules. If we break these rules, then shame will come out. So sometimes the rules are useful, they help us live together, but most of the time the rules are outdated and harmful. They keep us trapped in fear of rejection. And even when we're expressing ourselves, this would be healthy and life-giving. There's that part of us that's constantly pulling us back, because it's like saying, no, you're going to get rejected again. You're going to get that pain again. So this shame will come out also as this inner voice. This shame speaks out, and I talk about this in parts work. These voices could be the authority figure of our past. It could be our parents, or it could be the teacher that told us that we weren't good enough, or that we were always going to be stupid, or something like that. The parent that told you you'd never amount to anything, or the classroom bully who constantly mocked you. And over time, we internalize those voices. That becomes our inner critic. That becomes this echo in our head, and it carries on going, until we confront it and actually sit with it. So this is the thing. The shame feels so convincing because we don't ever question this voice. It doesn't sound like an external opinion. It literally just feels like us. We don't realize it's not us. So then it will start. This voice will then start to shape our behavior. So when we look at our lives, we can start to see how many decisions have been shaped by shame. Like not speaking up, not putting yourself out there, not going for a certain job, sabotaging, procrastination, avoiding intimacy, overachieving, and the other side of the spectrum, overachieving because you need to prove your worth, or people pleasing. Always wanting to be seen as good. If you're not seen as good, that means you're bad. That triggers the shame. That means you're unlovable. That means you're going to be isolated, humiliated. So shame can make us play the world. It makes us play it small. But it can also drive us to overcompensate. And both strategies are ways of managing the pain and avoiding just going near that pain, avoiding triggering this exiled part of us. So these protecting parts of us that figure out that we have this shame, they are constantly working to make sure that you never expose yourself. The real you, that is. So they're constantly on guard, constantly in this fight or flight, looking for the threat, making sure that you're always following the rules if you're a people pleaser. So there is also a strong connection between shame and anger. And I started to notice as I was healing, as I was getting through a lot of this, that I was opening this gap for more anger to come out. And it was all that was happening was because these protecting parts had relaxed. There were parts of me that were angry about the past, about what I'd done, about the world. And because I was constantly suppressing that part of me, suddenly that part comes out and starts getting angry at the world. I think, oh no, this isn't working. I can't handle this. So I had to really look at that as well and start to sit in that anger as well. So this also is anger is a mask for shame as well. So when shame arises, it makes us feel exposed and weak. And instead of collapsing into that vulnerability, many people flip it into rage. It comes out as anger. Think of the person who gets criticized and they can't take that they may be ostracized from the group, or they may be different. So they react angrily, really angrily, like rage will come out. And on the surface, it looks like it's just, defensiveness or aggression. But underneath, it's shame saying, I can't bear to feel unworthy, so I'll attack instead. Go online and type in triggered into YouTube. You'll see all these people have these what Eckhart Tolle will call a pain body attack. And then another avenue of where shame will come out, and probably one of the biggest for me, is relationships. So shame is one of the biggest barriers to creating an authentic connection with somebody, because you never really feel like you want to let your guard down. And when you feel ashamed of who you are, you hide. You only show the parts of yourself that you think will be accepted. This creates distance. Intimacy then requires vulnerability. But if shame is in the driver's seat, vulnerability feels literally impossible. You may sense that you're longing for some closeness, but then you're pushing everybody away. You're afraid if you want to actually connect with somebody that they're going to actually see you, the real you, these parts of you that you don't want them to see, and that they'd leave. And either you sabotage, or you attract people that sabotage, or you sabotage through never really getting close to anybody, because you never really let them in. So the way that you work with shame is you start with awareness. The first step in working with shame is awareness. You have to notice when it arises. This means paying attention to the subtle physical and emotional cues that, the drop in your chest, the urge to hide, the voice that says, don't let them see you, stay in tonight, don't go to the gym, don't go to boxing. That's one for me. Like, don't let anyone see you've done this thing. Shame. They can't see you, so it's easier if we just stay at home. We can't face this. We can't face people. And you've got to get better at spotting that. And awareness doesn't mean, that you fix it straight away, but awareness is a big first step. So this is why I always talk about meditation and being present. You've got to recognize when shame comes up. And you're more likely to see it the more present you are. And then you've got to use compassion. And I'm not talking about this like new age self-help compassion that says, oh, just love yourself. You've got to really see it for what it is. And when I say compassion, you see that when you say, for example, shame will say like, you're unworthy. You start to see that you're human and that you start to see this objectively. That's compassion. You drop the judgment. Compassion means no judgment. So then you'll reconnect with that, what's true about you, why this mechanism kicked in. Shame is a mechanism. It's a function of the brain. And this doesn't mean that you excuse harmful behavior. It means that you're holding the person, yourself or others, with a sense of understanding. Everybody carries these wounds. Everybody has mistakes. But compassion allows us to see shame without going unconscious, without being consumed by shame. And the next thing is vulnerability. And this is a kind of like a dirty word for men. But vulnerability is the disruptor of shame, because it's courage. Vulnerability is courage. So when you share the parts of yourself you're most afraid of hiding, shame loses its power. So you've got to find safe people and be vulnerable to them. And this is very scary. This is difficult, but it's very freeing. And when you can, use it. So each time you reveal a part of yourself that you don't accept and you see the reaction in someone else, it will lower the shame, and the grip of shame loosens and the mask will crack. And then you'll start to see that you aren't this, you are the self, the true self. And the self will start to actually be able to shine through without having to use these protectors or managers or masks. They will relax. So this is a journey. And this is a healing journey. It will become more difficult before it gets easier, because these raw wounds come forward, and this makes you feel like things are getting worse, but that's actually a sign of progress. So the key is to start with this process, to let the shame come up, but then don't run from it. That's when you got to stay strong. And you will relapse if you have an addiction, or you isolate, or you become apathetic, antisocial. You'll notice that when you go in and out of it, but that will become easier. And the more that you turn and face this, the energy that's bound up in shame becomes strength. It becomes empathy. It becomes courage. You'll start to have more compassion for yourself. The self will start to take over. And then you'll notice that the shame and the shadow are deeply connected. So this is when we talk about integrating the shadow, I'll talk about this quickly. What we're doing is these parts of ourselves that we're denying and hiding, we start to have a lot more acceptance for. So the more that we push something away, the more that it's controlling us in the unconscious. That's the shadow. So when we're working with the shadow, we start to notice that, okay, there are parts of me that I don't like, but you accept that, and you start to bring that forward, and you start to see why. And you can ask yourself, what part of me am I unwilling to show? What part of me am I most afraid that others would see? And then you'll start to get, these questions are very powerful. These questions will lead you to the heart of shame. What am I most afraid others will see about me? If my protectors, or these parts of me that are protecting me, stop protecting me, what am I afraid will happen? And then just let what comes up. See what comes up. And that's essentially parts work. And then you'll start to feel a lot more freedom. So it takes time, but freedom will come eventually. It doesn't come from eliminating shame. It comes from changing your relationship with shame. And when shame comes up, and instead of collapsing or reacting or going into apathy, we start to have more curiosity about ourselves. Well, that's interesting that I'm feeling like this. It's interesting that I want to hide right now, or I don't feel like doing things. Procrastination is a big manifestation of shame. So freedom then is to be able to feel the shame again and not be ruled by it. And be like, yeah, I feel this, but this does not define me. This does not control me. So you'll start to notice that if you name it, you notice it come up, you feel it in your body, you question it, and you see that it may not be your voice. You learnt this voice from a caregiver. And then you start to share it. You find safe people, therapists, coaches, your friends that you can trust, and you speak your shame. You talk about it. And then you offer yourself compassion, journaling, constant monitoring, presence, meditation. You'll start to notice that you'll start to develop a wholeness, and that you'll no longer see yourself as broken. And you may be a bit fucked up, right? We all are. But shame starts to come to the surface, and you change your relationship with it when you have this realization that, yeah, I am imperfectly perfect, or perfectly imperfect. And then you don't care so much about belonging or being seen or connecting as much. There's not this kind of need for that. But then because you're dropping that, you find it a lot easier to paradoxically, you'll find it a lot easier to connect with other people, because you won't feel the need to hide. So it starts with awareness, compassion, and courage will increase. And this shame will no longer have to define you. So if this has been helpful, if this is something that you've never heard about before, please subscribe to my channel. And thank you very much. Comment below, and see you in the next video.